Hello, this is another open letter video from InfoCamp in response to Chaldean's letter, 442's letter to me on the subject of jihadism and the global war on terror and psychological warfare tactics. Thank you for your reply, Chaldean442. Forgive my non-address of InfoCamp's Fabian tactics, as you mentioned, as I was a little bit short on time. Concerning that, I don't believe it will work now. The problem that we face now is not an insurgency that is homegrown with foreign ideas, but foreign insurgencies with ideas common to Islam. In order to deal with them, we'll have to stay there for decades and kill them until they get tired. Waging an economic war against them is not really practical because we are in the West are the ones funding the insurgencies. By buying oil from OPEC nations, which are mostly Islamic, we are funding terrorism indirectly. The insurgency, as we like to call it, is not that at all, but is a global Islamic terrorism. Muslims have a thing called zakat. Zakat is something they're required to do, which is charitable acts. But unfortunately, spreading Islam is considered as charitable acts. It is where they are getting much of their funding from. In Afghanistan, the poppy fields are being destroyed, so revenue from narcotics is at an all-time low. But unless the West stops purchasing oil, economic warfare will never be successful. In this case, we are our own worst enemies. The other aspect is that there are several nations supporting them. Iran, Syria, who are Sunni in InfoCamp's view. Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, Iran and Syria are Shia, and Pakistan and Saudi Arabia are Sunni, but they are both supporting Islamic terrorism. Arabia's population supports them, but not the government. Unfortunately, it works out the same. Several years back, the Saudis aired several commercials on television claiming themselves as strong allies of the United States in response to much criticism to a telethon that they had in raising money for families of martyrs in Palestinian territories. This is the kind of thing that they believe in. One may say that they are radicals. Not so. A Pew poll conducted years back on the so-called moderate Muslims in London showed that 60% of Muslims in Britain agreed with the London bombings and the 9/11 World Trade Center attacks. That's an alarming figure. We are not dealing with an isolated case as in Malaya. This is simply an extension of global jihadism. The US has dealt with this kind of thing before and dealt with it brutally by modern eyes. In the Philippines, we had issues with the Moro tribe there, and they were Islamic. A much younger Persian, the same general that commanded US forces in World War I, dealt with them by ordering his men to dip their bullets in pig blood and after attacking buried their leaders in pigskin. He was also very loyal to those who allied themselves with him. This had such an effect on that the insurgency fell apart and no more Islamic insurgencies occurred until much after the Second World War. By today's standards, this would be called a war crime. The differences between Malaya and today is that this is globally funded, and we are the ones that are doing most of the funding. Every time you fill your vehicle with gas, petrol, a portion of what you spent goes to zakat. This is a predicament we're in. There are no answers except to be brutal by either attacking those nations who are aiding and abetting them, or show the same resolve we did in World War II, and by clamping down on the insurgency by adopting Persians' tactics and playing on their fears and superstitions. They'll run out of martyrs in short order, and this will also lead to new problems. The truth is that we have to have the resolve to win at whatever cost. Failure will lead to a more belligerent enemy. Britain had the same dilemma when they dealt with the Sudan, which was much worse than what we faced in the Philippines. Britain was defeated on a few occasions and finally won by a combined British and Egyptian army. This was Kitchener. This insurgency is far more complicated than that in Malaya. The US has dealt with communist insurgencies in Central America, and we were able to contain them quite easily. This is far more insidious. This religious ideology goes back to the 7th century. Concerning a video reply, I don't make videos on YouTube. My skill level in that area is wanting. If you're offering to do it, as I understood it, I'm amenable to it. My time is very limited currently, and I will be so for some months. Concerning Fabius, he wasn't exceptionally popular in his time. The Senate liked him because he kept Romans from getting massacred at Trebia, Trasmene, and famously Cannae. But that works only if you're incapable of defeating your enemy. The Romans were very capable of defeating Hannibal and should have at Cannae, but then there was a man called Varius who was an idiot. And the equally idiotic was the dual consulship of the Romans, which called for consuls to rotate command every day. Unfortunately, the consul with his head screwed on right died, while Varius didn't even have the Roman decency to commit suicide. How sad that the Romans, who had better soldiers than Hannibal, had to endure 15 years of embarrassment until Scipio came of age to assume the consulship and prosecute the war as any Roman general would have. His father and uncle had defeated Hasdrubal, Hannibal's brother, consistently until the Spanish allies betrayed them and both died in battle. Scipio assumed command and chased Hasdrubal out of Spain. Another Roman general, Nero, had bottled up Hannibal in his encampment and caught Hasdrubal's messenger to Hannibal and discovered that he had intended to link up with Hannibal. Nero marched 150 miles and fought the battle of the Mitarius River, with the Roman garrison aiding him, and marched back, all done in 5 days. Hannibal knew nothing until the head of his brother was thrown over the ramparts. Roman generals, it was the dual consulship nonsense that kept them tied up from doing the great feats of arms that they were known for in their later days. I recommend a book for you. It's called Scipio Greater Than Napoleon. The author's name is Basil Lyndall Hart, and it is an interesting book. I think you will enjoy it. So yours sincerely, Chaldean442 to InfoCamp, which is myself. InfoCamp is me. Okay, so that's his view on the Islamic insurgency and global jihad, and he is an American soldier with 9 years experience, so I have to defer somewhat to his knowledge, as my military experience is rather less than that. But he brought up some interesting points, and I think it might be worth another video for me to respond to those points. But on the whole, I broadly agree with him. Thank you for your letter, Chaldean442, and I hope you will subscribe to InfoCamp channel as well as anybody who watches this. Thank you. I wish I just had 140,000 subscribers, as I have 140,000 upload views, and then I would be a very large channel on YouTube. Thank you, and have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.